at Prinesh, and day one the rotavator broke, and so Serena had this incredible tool, which the little red thing that Trish is holding there, that would allow you to manually cut turf. And quite remarkably, really, the day began by actually manually cutting turf before we got the big guns in, before this rotavator was replaced, which it duly was, but that took a day to sort out. Once we had the rotavator, things got slightly easier in terms of stripping the turf, and we got a huge amount of turf off this area. Of course, the theory is that if you remove the turf, you remove the nutrients, and that will benefit the wild flowers. But it was a little bit hard to imagine the theory there. We were desperately stripping this area of turf, subdividing the area into plots, and trying to scatter an appropriate amount of wildflower seed mix into each one of those plots so that we would have a balanced spread of seed. One of the first things I did after lockdown was I drove up to Prinesh to find out if we'd been successful in our endeavours to create a wildflower meadow. And I think it's sufficient to say that we were incredibly successful. There was a very unusual distribution of colour in a very small area, really. One strip was visibly more colourful than the others. And I still haven't gotten to the bottom of how that came to happen. There's all sorts of conspiracy theories on it. But one area is shaded by a large oak tree, so perhaps that had something to do with it. Nevertheless, I spent about 2 hours in that area, taking all sorts of photographs, and it was chock full of butterflies, crickets, ladybirds, frogs were in there, and we'd done it. Absolutely delighted to say. So thank you to everyone that was involved in what was quite a back-breaking and prolonged project. What's happened next is a project called Cotswolds Glorious Grasslands, which is led on by a lady called Anna Field. She's had a meeting at Prinesh with Sue, and what's been arranged is that this area, 2/3 of this will be used as green hay, and that is being transported into the former deer park in an area that's being mown, along with some other seed mix from elsewhere. And so there's going to be another wildflower area, which is great news. And the remaining 1/3, because it's best practice to have some standing winter crop so that you don't destroy all your caterpillars and chrysalises. So 1/3 will remain standing over winter. And Serena's volunteered to go up and sow a bit of yellow rattle because the grass was looking a little bit dominant. So we're grateful, thanks for that as well. So fantastic achievement, and I'm incredibly grateful to everyone involved. Like I said, probably the bit of the job that I've enjoyed the most historically in the first year in Gloucestershire and in my 2 previous years in Bristol has been this. It's been getting into the schools, it's been getting the moths onto the hands of the kids, it's been planting the wildflower areas with the kids, and going in again and seeing that the kids have retained all this information. And I just watched my school diary collapse as the pandemic hit. I was optimistic that I might be able to get into schools. I burned most of my annual leave right at the start of the pandemic, thinking, well, this can't last too long. Somewhat naively believing that might represent a solution. Then I thought we'd get into schools in September. There's not a cat in hell's chance of getting into a school at the moment. Their priorities are completely elsewhere. I've made invitations to schools that I go in electronically, that I Zoom in, and the teachers just aren't getting back to me. They're just too busy, they're too concerned. Their priority is on getting the kids through a global pandemic, and the idea that anyone external would visit, even electronically, it's not going to happen. So it's a great shame. It's something I'm very regretful of. I think it's completely understandable given our present situation. Nevertheless, we have risen to the challenge in different ways. So what I agree with my colleague in Scotland was that I would do lesson 1 and Polly in Scotland would do lesson 2. So these are the lessons that we normally give to kids. So we've made them as electronic resources, and that means that whether you're a teacher or you're a parent, you can now stream our lessons into your classroom. It's very difficult to know how many people have done this, but the fact is that we have signposted an awful lot of schools to this, an awful lot of parents to this. So I'm just going to let this play. I'm not going to play the whole lot. I'm just going to let it play for the first couple of minutes.
Hello everybody, my name is Matt and I work for Butterfly Conservation. Today I'm going to be talking about some really exciting creatures. So let's get started. We're going to talk about caterpillars, like this particular caterpillar. Now, what do caterpillars grow up to be? Yeah, that's right. They can be one of two things. They can be a moth or they can be a butterfly. This one is called a vapor moth. So this one's going to grow up to be a moth. Let's have a look at another moth. Wow, just look at this beautiful elephant hawk moth. Loads of people think moths are just dull and brown and boring, but this moth is bright pink. Caterpillars can grow up to be beautiful butterflies as well. Just look at these gorgeous butterflies feeding on this buddleia bush. The one with the jaggedy wings, which is orange with the black spots, that's a comma. Then we've got a peacock butterfly flying in. There's another peacock butterfly feeding on the flowers there. And at the back, we've got two small tortoiseshell butterflies. So lots of different types of butterflies in this photograph. So let's take a closer look at one of those lovely peacock butterflies, because this gives us a great chance to learn the body parts of a butterfly or a moth, because they're just the same. So a butterfly has two compound eyes, it has a head, and it has a body as well. And that body has a strange name. It's called a thorax. A thorax. A butterfly has got a tail as well, and that's got a strange name too. It's called an abdomen. An abdomen. And what are these on the top of the butterfly's head? Does anyone know the name of those? Well, they're called antennae. So butterflies and moths have got two antennae on the top of their heads. And of course, butterflies and moths have got wings. They've got 4 wings. Now, does anybody know what sort of animal a butterfly or a moth actually is?
So I'll leave you on that cliffhanger. I imagine that you probably do. So having successfully created electronic content for kids, I've thought about how about creating some electronic content for adults. So I made a film and I got in touch with Chris Packham and Megan McCubbin, who at that moment in time were every morning at 9 o'clock during lockdown, they did this fabulous online program called the Self-Isolating Bird Club. So I got in touch with them to see if they'd like this for the Self-Isolating Bird Club, because they were getting considerable audiences in audiences above sort of 30,000 people were watching the self-isolating bird club every single morning. So so I submitted my video to them, and I'm pleased to say that they used it. And not only that, their introduction was one of the most memorable and bizarre that happened throughout the self-isolating bird club. So I'll mute myself and I'll play the video.
Now look at me, I've become totally overexposed. A lot of people have been saying that for a long time. So look, what we're going to do, have you seen Danny Boyle's Sunshine film, that fantastic, sci-fi? Here's our interpretation of Danny Boyle's Sunshine. It's total eclipse.
We lost our sanity.
Hold on, we've got to try and find a spot where there's no sun. This is the trouble. We're in the woods to get better signal, but we're being attacked by mosquitoes, ticks, and now a nuclear fireball 93 million miles away. Anyway, look, let's move swiftly on to another fantastic contributor, Matt Brierley, who's going to tell us all about some of the commoner UK butterflies that we can see at this time of year. Over to you, Matt.
Now that we finally had some settled, calm, sunny weather, we're beginning to enjoy the first of our spring butterflies. So let's start off with the brimstone. The brimstone is generally the first butterfly that you see each year. In fact, it might be the definitive butterfly. So the story goes that in days of yore, when the farmers had their cows in the barns overwintering, when they saw the first brimstone butterfly, they would say, that's the fly of the butter. That's the time now that I bring my cows out of the barns and into the fields to start making butter. So the brimstone was the butterfly. The male brimstone, he's really bright, he's garish, he's this bright green. The female, she's more a sort of white gold, the colour of straw. If you're a female brimstone butterfly, you will see the male brimstone butterfly as being even brighter because he's got UV reflectance on his forewings. It's colours that we can't see, but butterflies, they can see in UV, as can moths, some birds, rodents. They can all see in the ultraviolet spectrum. Thinking of the next spring butterfly, the peacock butterfly, that's another butterfly that's got ultraviolet reflectance on its wings. So it overwinters as an adult butterfly, as did the brimstone, and it will hibernate somewhere, say in a log pile. It'll have its wings closed, and this bit of the wing is quite cryptic, quite dark, but when it flashes those wings, you see these fantastic eye dots, and the eye dots have ultraviolet reflectance. If a predator creeps up on it in its winter sleep, it'll flash its wings. The peacock butterfly is a member of the nymphalid family. So are small tortoiseshells, red admirals, comma butterflies. I'm often asked, what can I do for butterflies in my garden? And one of the best things you can do is plant nettles, because the caterpillars of all those nymphalid butterflies, they all eat nettles. So that brings us neatly on to the small tortoiseshell. When you look at the population of small tortoiseshells based on the big butterfly count, which is run by Butterfly Conservation, it suggests that there's been a slump in numbers, and that's been attributed to a parasite called Sturmia bella. It's a fly, it will lay its eggs on nettles, and when the caterpillars come along, they'll eat one of these eggs, and then when they pupate in their chrysalis, what emerges is a Sturmia bella fly instead of a small tortoiseshell butterfly. So we thought small tortoiseshells were having a really bad time. There's not many being recorded. But a chap in St Albans called Malcolm Hull, what he's discovered is that small tortoiseshell butterflies are going into hibernation a lot earlier. Possibly it's a selection pressure from Sturmia bella, the parasite. If you were genetically predetermined to go into hibernation a little bit later, you've been nobbled by the parasite, because that's when the parasite gets going in late summer. But if you're an early hibernator, you're going into hibernation early. When you were a caterpillar, Sturmia bella wasn't around, so you've dodged the bullet. So perhaps very quickly, we've ended up with a population of small tortoiseshell butterflies, which are early hibernators. Other butterflies to look out for, orange tips, they're just on the wing. You will see the females prospecting the garlic mustard that they lay on, and you will see the males patrolling their territories. The speckled woods are out. They're very territorial. They'll normally be in the same patch of your garden every single day. So plenty of spring butterflies to keep your eyes peeled for. And if you do see them, there's a butterfly conservation app. It's called I Record Butterflies, and that generates really important data that butterfly conservation can then use to help monitor and ultimately protect our beautiful spring butterflies.
Thank you, Matt. Interesting stuff about the small tortoiseshell there, with these parasites affecting when they hibernate, which will have, of course, profound impacts on that population and how well it does in the UK. Changing sign of the times with our butterflies. Thanks again, Matt. And you can follow Matt at Matt Brierley on Twitter, of course. And one other thing, the butterfly conservation colouring competition is running. Yes, there's a colouring competition, 3 different age categories. You can download it from their website.
It's beautiful. Lots of different butterflies. You've got the wing scales. You've got everything. So you can use any medium that you'd like. Get creative and send those in to Butterfly. The link is in the comments.
Link's in the comments. You can see it there. And I think the winner's going to be announced next week. So something to do over the weekend.
So that was me on Chris Packen and Megan McCubbin's Self-Isolating Bird Club. And what an amazing, unexpected opportunity to engage with an audience of plus 35,000 people when, you know, I expected that I'd be meeting very small groups of people. So the other thing that we did was they talked about this butterfly competition. And this was at that point of lockdown where people's mental health was suffering, and we created this very basic colouring competition to engage a new audience, bring a new audience to butterfly conservation, people that hadn't even heard of our charity before, just a simple activity that they could do with their kids. And I got to judge the winners. And here are some of the entries that came in for the butterfly conservation colouring competition. So here we were now in this headspace of creating online content for people, and we had, Sue mentioned it, the indoor Minchinhampton meeting that actually wasn't in Minchinhampton at all. And I delivered this presentation, Managing Urban Spaces for Butterflies. I'm not going to play any of it. I've just put the presentation in there. It is a presentation that talks about the importance of getting the mowing regimes right for grass verges, for amenity grasslands, the headlines of taking the clippings away so that you reduce your nutrient load, which is really good for wildflowers, which in turn can be really good for Lepidoptera, provided that you leave some standing crop to overwinter. And this presentation, it was really well received at the indoor meeting. So I'd recorded the indoor meeting. So I made it into a resource online. And then, because that was well received, I thought I'll have a go at putting this on Twitter. And I created a Twitter thread with these messages in the Twitter thread. A total experiment. I'd never written a Twitter thread before, but I just thought I'd see what happened. So I created this Twitter thread just as an experiment, really. So it was the slides that I'd used in my Minchinhampton indoor meeting. And to say this Twitter thread performed well is somewhat of an understatement. So there we go. It's been retweeted. That first tweet, that was the top of the thread, retweeted there 266 times. The whole thread, when you add up every tweet in the thread, you can see the whole lot has been retweeted 333 times. But then when we start looking at the impressions this thread has made in terms of how people have engaged with it, because you might read a thread but choose not to retweet it, but hey, you've read it. So people that have read it, 70,931 people. The people that have done something with it, as in they've spent long enough on there to definitely have read it, or maybe they've liked it, so something along those lines, 5,152. So big numbers. But the best thing about this thread has been that people have tagged their local councils into this on a national scale and upheld this information as being very best practice. And that has been fantastic to watch. Not only that, individuals have taken the conservation messages in this thread to heart, and they have approached their local councils to get management changed, but they've also enacted these changes in their own gardens and contacted me individually to explain that they've set up a wildflower meadow in their gardens, and now they've sowed yellow rattle, that they've left some standing crop, that they've mowed some of their meadow, and it's just been fantastic. So I would never have written this thread if it wasn't for the pandemic, and it's had a wonderful response. What I want to do now, we have made 3 different films, which will be the project's legacy, really. Our very first film was back in the days when you could go out and meet people, and I hope we get back to those days. And in fact, myself and Jen, last week, we did manage it, socially distanced, groups of 6, but we did lead a fantastic walk, well, 4 walks in total. We managed to engage with 24 people at Tortworth, showing them bats and moths. But anyway, here's the first.
It's a very big day for butterfly conservation. We're here at Sudeley Castle. It's the 50th anniversary of the Very Hungry Caterpillar. So we've got live caterpillars to show people. We've got moths. We're potting up pollinator plants. But this couldn't happen without our fantastic army of volunteers.
You don't need any qualifications for this other than an ability to talk to people about something that you really love.
I don't think people should be scared of volunteering if they know nothing about the subject. It's more about how keen you are and getting some enthusiasm and impart an interest in people.
It's a chance really to show people the moths, show them how beautiful a lot of them are. And children's eyes light up really when they see them.
It's really, really lovely to see how you can enthuse people and telling the children and their parents about the sort of plants that encourage butterflies into their gardens.
On Thursday, he ate through 4 strawberries.
It's a day out amongst like-minded people with the same passion. We have a lot of fun and I learn a bit more every time I come, and that's the beauty really, that you're learning all the time.
So you shone a really bright light. Chatting to people about nature is so important, especially kids. So if you've got some free time, we'd love you to volunteer for butterfly conservation. Come along, find out what it's all about and help inspire people to a love of nature.
So that was our first film, and that was devised to be a tool to encourage people to come along and volunteer at events. And hopefully at some point in the future, we can use that, not just in Gloucestershire, but nationally, as a tool to encourage people to volunteer at events for butterfly conservation. Our next film is again about encouraging people to volunteer, but a different sort of volunteering. This time we're focusing on encouraging people to volunteer to survey.
If you've got an interest in butterflies and perhaps have previously been involved in a big butterfly count, you may be interested to know that there are 3 other ways that you could perhaps get involved in the monitoring of butterflies. My name is Christine Blythe and I survey butterflies for the Garden Butterfly Survey, preferably when the sun's shining and even better with a G&T in my hand. The data that Butterfly Conservation would like you to record is essentially which species you see, how many of those species that you see, i.e. the maximum count at any one time, and the time of year that you see them. You submit records at least once a month throughout the year, but you can submit the records at any other time. I go out into the garden, and if I see butterflies, then I make a note of them, and they go into the submission as well. The data is used by Butterfly Conservation to monitor the health of garden butterfly populations. Even though urban garden butterfly numbers are in decline, it's still possible to do lots of things in your garden to attract the butterflies. For example, I've got 2 buddleia bushes which attract the summer butterflies. I have got ivy and a recently planted holly bush for the holly blue butterflies, and I've also recently planted 2 buckthorn shrub bushes which are supposed to attract the brimstone butterfly. By making a few small changes, I can play my part in helping to reverse the decline in garden butterfly numbers. And it's great to know that by reporting the butterflies I see fluttering around my garden, I can do even more to help save butterflies.
Many common butterfly species have seriously declined in the countryside, and this survey helps us to monitor the situation. My name is Tricia Atkinson and I survey butterflies in the countryside. How do we know how the butterflies are faring in the wider countryside? Are they responding well to government-led farming schemes? Are they thriving, surviving, or declining? That's where the wider countryside butterfly survey comes in. The way it works, you are randomly assigned a 1 kilometre grid square. It could be in a town, a village, or a pocket of unexplored countryside. You walk 1 kilometre through the square one way and 1 kilometre back, recording butterflies as you go. You visit your square twice, at least 10 days apart in July and August, although you can visit extra times if you like. The wider countryside butterfly survey shows us how butterflies are doing across the whole landscape. I love recording butterflies. There's always something interesting to see, and sometimes I come across something really special.
My name is Maggie Moss, and I am a member of a team who will book a butterfly transect in inner city urban Bristol. The transect is a regular route that's walked every week for 26 weeks right across the summer, and we record butterflies. We have a team, and that for us is really good. It means that no one person is responsible for 26 weeks. We often walk it together. Our transect is a real urban transect. We come through a graffiti tunnel, much used by local artists. We have a nature reserve, which has unimproved grassland. And we have lots of the marble whites, we get ringlets, we get meadow browns, we get blues, all sorts of butterflies you would associate with grassland and not with urban gardens. The other part of our transect crosses through an allotment site. It's very, very good for butterflies. Urban butterflies are under a lot of pressure, and they're also not as well surveyed as rural butterflies are. Surveying butterflies is really important because they are a bit like the canary in the coal mine. If butterfly populations start crashing, we know that something is going on. Anyone can take part in recording butterflies, and it doesn't matter where you are. You could be at home, you could be right out in the countryside, or you could be right in the middle of a busy city.
So again, that was a film, and you know, huge thanks to all the people that gave up their time to be in that film. These shoot days always take a lot longer than one might expect, but that is a film that we will use nationally to steer people towards volunteering. We're particularly going to use Christine's segment about the garden butterfly survey next year after the big butterfly count has happened. That's going to go out through the national social media channels in the hope that people that have done big butterfly count will switch and do garden butterfly survey. So a terrific tool, not just for Gloucestershire, but nationally. And our final film of the day, this time about volunteering on nature reserves.
The thing that always stands out for me is the people that you meet, because they're just such inspiring, fantastic people. Primarily our volunteers come to us because they have an interest in butterflies, moths, the environment and wildlife. But they discover that volunteering is an awful lot more than that once they start to get involved.
I really wanted to work outdoors and with nature and with the environment and with groups of people and feel I'm doing some valued work.
I love being in this natural environment, and it just feels right. It feels good.
We've had so many winter storms this year, we often find that we can't get down the path because of trees falling across it. And this one is a particularly large one, so the sooner we get this cleared, the better.
We have cleared a lot of scrub, and we do make wood piles and habitat piles, but it's quite difficult to get rid of vast amounts of wood.
Though it's a cold, bleak day today, what we're doing now, all the work, it'll really pay off, and it looks absolutely stunning in the summer.
It's just amazing, really, in the summer here. A hidden gem, really, in the Cotswolds.
It makes me feel I'm doing something really valuable. If you come volunteering, it might be small, but it's significant.
Volunteers are essential to work on our reserves.
In 2019, in Gloucestershire alone, volunteers gave over 1,400 hours of time, and that was practical conservation. They were making habitat for our butterflies and for our moths and for their caterpillars. If you think Gloucestershire's just one county and you scale up the number of people who are out there doing things, it's absolutely incredible the amount of work that happens across the UK.
I would definitely recommend volunteering to anyone with the spare time. It's so enriching, and you're working and helping out, making a real difference in somewhere very beautiful.
There's great camaraderie and we meet lots of like-minded people. It's really enriched my life.
There's an opportunity to connect with nature. There's also an opportunity to connect with other people. There's a chance to learn new skills, things that you may never have realised that you wanted to learn. One of the really fun things about volunteering is it's also a way of exercising without actually knowing that you're exercising. You get up, spend the whole day outside, you're meeting other people, you're doing practical, active things, but you don't feel like you're going for a run or having to go down the gym. All of these things have been shown to be important to our health and our well-being. And volunteering really does help to tick all of those boxes.
I love to feel the air on my face, the sky and the landscape. It really gives me a sense of well-being.
Once you're outside in nature, you don't want to be anywhere else. You don't want to go back indoors. And it's really, really amazing to be out here.
I think at the end of the day, you've spent all day doing something very practical, very hands-on, and you can step back and look and feel proud of the things that you've done, but also you've shared that experience with the other people around you, and that's a really positive, fun thing.
So again, it's a film that we've created that at this present moment in time, you know, work parties are beginning to go ahead, but they're going ahead very small numbers and in a very controlled way. So probably not too smart to actively promote and go on a drive for new volunteers at this moment in time. But in the future, as the pandemic eases, as normality begins to resume, that film will be a very useful recruitment tool, not only for Gloucestershire, but hopefully nationally. When we come to the break, you'll see there in the comments box, there's an email address, dov@gloucesterbutterflies.org. You can see the email address. And there's a request there from Karen and David Nichols to get involved in the Silver Duke of Edinburgh award scheme. That they've done an absolutely amazing job in not only starting, but keeping going through this pandemic and getting two kids, Xander and Amelia, through their silver service. And I'm delighted to say that Xander has put together a few words about his experience. This will be the last thing that I share with you today.
Hi, my name is Xander, and I will be talking about my personal experience volunteering with butterfly conservation, which I hope will persuade DOV participants such as myself to join in maintaining, looking at, studying and protecting rather extraordinary creatures, the butterfly, and, rather contradictory to the name, moths. They may not seem like the most interesting insects ever, but if you look past the occasional large white or common blue that sometimes lands in your garden, you can see that butterflies and moths are far from mundane. For instance, did you know that butterflies, during their metamorphosis, turn into a soup-like liquid, only to emerge as a fully grown butterfly? As well as this, butterflies and moths exhibit some strange, or indeed amazing behaviours, like, for example, they taste with their feet. This is because they have taste receptors on their feet to help them locate nectar and to check if it is good for eating or not. The reason why butterfly conservation is so important, especially with global warming, is because many of the insects will find an increasing number of places uninhabitable. So by maintaining and, for lack of a better word, strengthening habitats, we can support the 59 species of butterfly and 2,500 species of moth in the UK so that they do not decrease in number. Could you live in a world without butterflies and moths? I will now talk about what happened in the volunteering aspect of butterfly conservation. You will be in small work parties of around 10 people with which you will toil alongside. This work party will include very experienced butterfly conservationists who will share their knowledge of the insects with you so that you may learn about them through actually seeing the insects firsthand. The butterfly reserves that you will visit are in Roughbank, near Bisley, and the Masts on Hesbury Hill, which is near Cheltenham. The reserves are located here because the limestone grassland that grows abundantly there. Butterflies and moths thrive on this particular grassland because of its tendency to grow on warm south-facing slopes and its wide variety of alkaline-tolerant plants like kidney vetch, cowslip, and just unimproved grass. What I personally enjoyed from my experience was talking to enthusiasts of butterfly conservation, such as David and Karen Nichols, about insects. They have many interesting insights as to why moths and butterflies do this and that, making the insects interesting, so that people, like myself, will learn about them. On the sites, there are many butterflies and moths, but my favourite one is the poplar hawk moth. This is because it has such a unique wing shape which allows it to blend in with its surroundings, and which can be only compared with brown leaves with which it hides in. As well as this, the poplar hawk moth adult does not have a proboscis, or mouthpart, and so does not feed, getting all of its nutrients from when it was a caterpillar, so that all of its energy and time will be spent in search of a mate. I hope you've enjoyed this little podcast. Please support butterfly conservation in any capacity you can, be that volunteering, donating, or just learning about them a little more. Before I leave you, I would like to impart a quote with you. Between our birth and death we may touch understanding, as a moth brushes a window with its wing. Christopher Fry. I wish you the best of your day and hope you have learned a little something from me.